10.75% per annum with an 18-month ABSA Dynamic Fixed Deposit account, which allows you to build your financial future. Plus, you'll earn an additional interest rate if you join ABSA Rewards. Join tens of thousands of South Africans who've already taken advantage of this account's flexibility. Open yours now on our banking app or absa.co.za to maximize returns. Your story matters. ABSA is an authorized financial services and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
EFC is live this Thursday. Two of the most thrilling fighting talents to have emerged from the Mother City in recent years, Tamelo Manyamala and Terrence Bolello, put everything on the line to face each other for the interim flyweight title, which guarantees a shot against the currently unavailable champion Nkazimulu Zulu later in the year. Also, Ayanda Zwane and Sibarashe Akonya fight for #1 contendership. EFC 114 live this Thursday. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
As around the sun, the earth knows she's revolving, and the rosebuds know to bloom in early May. Just as hate knows love's a cure, you can rest your mind assured that I'll be loving you always. As now can't reveal the mystery of tomorrow, but in passing we'll grow older every day. Just as honest born is new, you know what I say is true, that I'll be loving you always.
Until the rainbow burns the stars out of the sky.
Always.
Until the ocean covers every mountain
It's gonna be always.
Until the day that 8 times 8 times 8
You
is
know it's gonna be always.
Until the day that is the day that I know.
Did you know that true love lasts for nothing? Her acceptance is the way we pay. Did you know that life has given love a guarantee to last through forever? Another day.
As today I know I'm living for tomorrow. Couldn't make me the past, but that I mustn't fear, 'cause you're here.
Now I know deep in my mind the love of me I felt behind.
And I'll be loving you.
Loving you until the rainbow burns the stars out in the sky. Loving you until the ocean covers every mountain high. Loving you until the dolphins fly and Paris live at sea. Loving you until the dream of life and life becomes a dream. Now ain't that love in you?
Night and night
Always.
till the trees and seas just up and fly away.
I'll be loving you forever.
Did you know that true love asks for nothing?
True love don't want a thing.
Her acceptance is the way we pay. Did you know that life has given love a guarantee to last forever?
Another day.
As around the sun, the earth knows she's revolving, and the rosebuds know to bloom in early May.
Now I know deep in my mind the love of me I left behind.
And I'll be loving you.
Loving you
always.
until the rainbow burns the stars out in the sky.
I'll be loving you
until the ocean covers every mountain high. Loving you until the dolphins fly and Paris live at sea. Loving you until the dream of life and life becomes a dream. Now ain't that love in you? Yeah. Now ain't that love in you? Yeah.
It is George Michael coming through featuring Mary J. Blige on this one with As. It probably is going to go down as one of the Billboard Top 100 songs of all time. Indeed, a coming together of two incredible artists. And of course, it was 2016 when George Michael passed away from heart failure and a fatty liver at the tender age of 53, with so much life and so much talent still to give. That is how we kick off our show this afternoon. It's a cold, bitterly cold afternoon in Johannesburg, even though the sun is out and shining. But I know that the weather is causing havoc for much of the country and has done so over the last couple of days since that cold snap hit us. Thousands of families, in fact, waking up to complete devastation today with the floods that took place yesterday in the Eastern Cape overnight and wreaking havoc. And of course, that freak tornado that ravaged parts of KwaZulu-Natal yesterday, particularly Otongati, being hit quite hard. And I think at some point during the course of the show, we're going to try and be in communication with some of our colleagues and just find out what the state is on the ground. And of course, those affected families that are in dire need of help right now, just to gather their lives all over again, and how we perhaps could chip in as far as that is concerned. But for now, we start at looking at a survey that tells us 9 out of 10 consumers opt for a particular grouping of the top 10 fast food outlets. We'll find out what some of those outlets are, and of course, what else was unpacked in the survey by way of you and I's choices that we make when it pertains to fast food, and what influences some of those choices. And of course, if there's been any sort of changes in as far as the trends are concerned in that space. We'll also catch up with the folks from we'll catch up with some folks who are going to tell us a little bit more about the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture's publishing hub, who are looking for diverse voices to apply for a manuscript publishing grant of around 25,000 Rand. And they'll tell us more about that particular grant, and of course who does qualify and who can apply, and all those necessary details. On the other side of 2 o'clock, we are going to have a health focus in looking at some respiratory issues coming up on the other side of 2. I'll tell you more about that later on. And we'll also indulge a conversation around South Africa's invisible eating disorders. We'll find out exactly what those are on the other side. 086 000 2032 is the number that you can call us on if you want to weigh in on any of the conversations, or 061 410 410 07 is our WhatsApp line. You're always welcome to send through a WhatsApp note at any point during the course of the show. You are more than welcome to do so. And they are back from being deployed all over the country. They were covering the elections and the build-up to the elections, and hence we didn't have any streaming services last week, but they are back, and we are back live. So if you'd like to join us on the visual element, you can find that link on all of our social media platforms under the handle at SAFM Radio. Let's take a quick pause.
Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
So how often do you eat fast food? And do you have any rules in the house that pertain to fast food? What fast food you do indulge in? When do you have fast food? I know some households really only have fast food on the weekends. So Friday, Saturday, when mom or dad is refusing to cook and it becomes fast food night. And of course, on Saturday, everyone is on relaxation mode and no one's trying to be slaving away in the kitchen. And we thought we'd catch up with Andrew Fulton, who's the director at 8020 today. Approximately 20 million South Africans dine at fast food joints every month, with a staggering 90% choosing from the top 10 outlets. Very interesting indeed. How are you doing, Andrew?
I'm doing well, Bridget. How are you doing?
I'm awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time. Listen, 20 million South Africans dining at fast food outlets every single month. That's almost half the population.
It is. I mean, what's interesting about that is, I mean, we originally conceived of this article around Hamburger Day, which was the day before the elections, and it made me do a little bit of extra research since we sent this to you. And one thing we found was that more people have gone into KFC, Chicken Licken, and Hungry Lion in the past 4 weeks than voted on Wednesday.
Oh, very interesting. Do we attribute that to the stress? Are we stress eating?
Yeah, I guess we're not stress voting, which is more important. Yeah.
Very interesting. It's also interesting for me that you mentioned KFC, Hungry Lion, and Chicken Licken. These are all chicken outlets, by my understanding. And I wonder if it says anything about the preferences of consumers, because I remember a couple of years ago coming across some information that if you wanted to make it rich in the fast food world in Swaziland, you had to open a chicken outlet. And I wonder if we have a similar kind of trend. What are we? Are we chicken or beef people?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what we wanted to look into because, as I mentioned, it was Hamburger Day, and for me, that really speaks to beef, not a chicken burger. It's a beef burger, and so we looked at it. And what was interesting is if you look at the top 10, like there are 5 beef places: McDonald's, Spur, Burger King, Steers, and Wimpy. In terms of the chicken, there's only 4, KFC, Chicken Licken, Hungry Lion, and Nando's. But if you look at the unique number of people that eat at each of those, and it was a little bit of a stretch, but we kind of broadly classified, both Wimpy and Steers as beef places. That's a unique cohort of 6.7 million people every month, which sounds like quite a lot. But if we look at just those 4 chicken places, they serve 15 million unique individuals every month. So hands down, chicken is the protein of preference for South Africans as well as clearly Swazi.
We are clearly chicken people. I mean, I guess to some degree, those in the health sector might say, oh, okay, we're willing to give you a brownie point for that because you're eating white meat, even though it's deep fried, but we'll give you a brownie point. Let's also look at the factors that, came into play here. I know that your survey had a look at things like quality, value, and convenience in as far as fast food choices are concerned.
Yeah, we did. Sorry, I'm just getting over this flu that everyone's dealing with, so my throat's a little bit scratchy.
No stress.
Yeah, I mean, so the survey we're looking at it's called the MAP survey. It's a survey that comes out quarterly. It speaks to 20,000 South Africans and then weights that up to the population of the country, so you can look at country trends. It's done by the MRF. And it asks a lot of questions about fast food, and the one was sort of the factors around what's important to people. And the top 3, number 1 came in as good quality food. Then that was, when we did correlation analysis, strongly associated with Chicken Licken, Debonair's, and Steers. The second was good value for money, which was Hungry Lion, so I guess bigger portions for less money. And then the third one was generous food portions. People they're not going to eat necessarily for the taste; they want to fill their bellies as well. So generous food portions, third most important factor, and that was also strongly associated with Hungry Lion.
Oh, okay. I must give them a shot. And people have been saying good things about them. And while we on that, by the way, were they also, I know obviously there were preferences in as far as those categories are concerned, quality, value, and convenience. And there's a lean towards chicken versus beef. But then I wonder if we're looking at the subcategories, whether we're looking at beef fast food chains or we're looking at chicken fast food chains, were they clear-cut front runners who are also consistently in your top 3 as the most preferred brands?
I mean, look, KFC and Chicken Licken and then it's a toss-up between Debonair's and McDonald's and Hungry Lion. That's the top 5 consistently over the past several years. The whole top 10 doesn't really move that much. I mean, you'll see people moving up and down a place, but that's remained really consistent. But it's important to remember, like the survey here, it's asking where do you eat. So this is the number of people who say they eat there. If we looked at revenue and other metrics, which we don't have from the survey, you'd get that from the actual store. Yeah. You might have a different picture.
Completely, I get that. And I wonder if we take it one step further, is there anything we can infer as to why the top 10 remain consistent, or it goes back again to those factors around quality, value, and convenience?
I would assume it does. I mean, one thing that I have reflected on is there's a couple fast food places that just haven't been successful in this country, even though they were chicken. If you think of, say, Popeyes. The other thing, Debonair's, it's a pizza place. It's in the top 5 consistently, but yet Pizza Hut really didn't seem to do much in terms of when they launched here. So I think there's a myriad of different factors that are kind of beyond my knowledge level to kind of define what makes a successful fast food place. But one thing I did notice is only Burger King is a kind of a relatively new entrant to the market, and even they've been around now, I'd say at least a decade, I would guess.
Yeah.
So, I think South Africans are loyal. They've always gone to the tried and trusted places. But then, issues of how many branches there are. Is this close to my work? Is it on the way home from work? These are the kind of factors that will come in to keep the place popular and on top 10.
Yeah. And I mean, I should have tagged in this question about 2 questions back when we were talking about preferences, because then I wonder, were there also any indicators as to our behavior, consumer behavior across different parts of the country? So a Joburg versus Durban, or a metro versus a peri-urban area in terms of our trends?
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing we didn't look at. You certainly could. The MAPS data set, it divides into not only province, but cities and main places. So you could look at those trends. I mean, what we did kind of look at was how people eat in terms of ordering habits. So a little bit there is there's about, what MAPS claims is about 1.4 million people who prefer to have their food delivered, and in that Mr. D is up over Uber Eats, and then the companies, the restaurants really were strongly correlated with delivery, McDonald's, Nando's, Wimpy, and Burger King. So those are the types of meals people want delivered. Whereas KFC and Hungry Lion and Chicken Licken are the kind of places people are going to actually order at the counter and then leave themselves. So there are different behaviors that people are used to, kind of how they actually get their food from the store.
And from an economic perspective, anything that came out of this report that was of interest?
Yeah, what was really interesting there is when you look at those top 10. Every single one of them in the last 6-month period lost foot count, according to this survey. So fewer people said that they'd eaten there in the last 4 weeks, except for KFC. KFC did actually gain slightly in the last wave of data, but the ones that did grow, the likes of a Pedro's, a fish and chip company, a Galitos, a Honcho's, and all of these are sort of value offerings, maybe almost a copycat offering of a more expensive, traditional fast food place. So what it does seem, because the other piece of information that's interesting is the number of people who say they've eaten in the last 4 weeks hasn't gone down. So people aren't eating out less, they're trading down, which we're seeing across a bunch of different behaviors, whether it be media consumption or your insurance or just the products you're buying in the grocery.
I mean, and implying, of course, knowing the state of the economy and how that's affecting households, that then informs the sort of trade down of your options.
Exactly. And then the interesting thing we're seeing, I mean, the work that we do quite a lot of is more in the credit space, and we're noticing just the pressure of interest rates on mortgages, on car loans, etc. So, it's not that kind of the expected middle class and lower classes that are pinched. It's up at the top as well. So even people who used to maybe treat their family to a Nando's on a Friday, they're now looking at maybe some cheaper chicken options.
Yeah. Always also interesting when one talks of convenience, of which you mentioned as one of the factors that come into play, convenience and convenience of location. I always wonder, what do we call convenience? Was that a question perhaps up on the survey as to what do we call convenience? Is 5 kilometers convenient versus 10 kilometers?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and then they didn't actually ask that. They did ask, is a convenience an important thing for your meal experience? And the ones that came up obviously there were like a steers, and I think in that space it was just more. Well, it's in the petrol station that I stop at.
Uh-huh.
I have to get petrol, so I may as well get a meal as well. Chicken licken. There's a lot of chicken lickens all over Johannesburg and Cape Town. So, I think convenience is more just is it on my route as opposed to how far it is from my house.
Yeah, very interesting survey and study indeed. And I wonder, parting shot, this is something I would advise myself if you are looking, and we've spoken quite a lot to the Franchising Association of South Africa. If you're looking to franchise, I would deep dive into this survey as presented by 80/20 because it could be of use.
It could. And I mean, if I was to part, a fascinating fact for me is 1 in 4 South Africans dined at KFC in the last month. So, we've got some definite preferences in this country, and yeah, some of them are fairly obvious.
Absolutely. Andrew, all the best with the cold. We understand
Thanks.
it is the season, and we appreciate you taking the time. That was Andrew Fulton, Director at 80/20, and of course, they are premier consumer insights and data science firm, and they've just released this latest report. Very interesting findings there. If you are thinking about getting into, the fast food space, this would probably be a report that is worth you just perusing and seeing the various preferences and factors that come into play when people choose where to dine and why to dine. And clearly KFC still coming out top of the pops, as you heard, and people still preferring chicken, largely over beef. So already there, 2 things for you to consider. I wonder how expensive is a KFC franchise these days, eh? Premium pricing right there. We've got the news headlines coming right up.
In your newsmaking headlines for this hour, economist Laura Campbell says structural challenges are continuing to undercut economic growth in the country. Her comments follow Stats SA's newly released data, which indicates that the country's economy shrank by 0.1% in the first quarter of this year. In other news, the KZN Premier Nomusa Dube-Ncube says the death toll from yesterday's storm has risen to 10, including 3 people that were killed outside the eThekwini metro. And lastly, the US has circulated a new draft Security Council resolution that seeks to support a new ceasefire proposal and hostage deal in Gaza. I'll be back at 2 with more on these and other stories. For SFM News, I'm Eva Chipa.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
The reason that this is happening, the reason people feel the way they do is because of what happened in 2021. Sham, have things changed in Phoenix since then? Has there been any healing, or is fear still the major sort of emotion at the moment? Is that really the problem here?
Well, I think since 2021, we've been very busy with communities from Bombay, from Inanda, from Zulisha. These were the affected areas. We are having various projects and programs which are currently also happening. And, this kind of thing is going to take a long time to heal. But we're very happy. In the next 1 week, in June 16, we're having in Inanda, where children from Phoenix would be interacting with Phoenix children from Mumbai on the issue of debate. We are hopeful that there is going to be peacing and lasting peace in the near future.
Sham Maharaj, thanks very much indeed. Phoenix Ubuntu Forum Coordinator.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes, 6 to 9 a.m. Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
So important to keep having these very uncomfortable dialogues around race relations in this country. If we are ever to find any kind of understanding amongst ourselves. The thought just being sparked on the back of that conversation from Stephen's show. Incredibly important to have them, no matter how comfortable or how uncomfortable it gets, and for us to speak our truth to each other. And I think a lot of times we stray away from truth because we kind of feel as if, we sort of layer it with negativity, right? And you think the worst is going to come of it. Yes, there might be some injured feelings here and there, but if you speak from a place of heart and a place of genuine experience, life experience, where you're not trying to necessarily necessarily destroy a particular person or community, but you're just trying to relay your lived experience in as far as it goes with them or alongside them. It can only but be a trust building exercise. At least that's my little opinion. 086 000 2032 is the number that you can call us on, or 061 410 4107 is our WhatsApp line. Sidima Mfeku joins me now, who's our colleague, an SABC reporter in the Eastern Cape and currently in East London. And we thought we'd try and touch base with some of our colleagues on the ground, given everything that's happening in the Eastern Cape and, of course, in Otongati as well. We're going to try and patch through to Durban, but there's some connection issues happening there because some power lines as well as some network towers are down due to that freak tornado that happened yesterday. How are you doing, Sidima? Are you good?
I'm very well, Bridget. Thanks. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. I know I've been sort of keeping my eye on the news. How are things looking in the Eastern Cape right now, post the weekend?
Well, what I must tell you, Bridget, is that, more than 5,000 people in both the Nelson Mandela Bay and Buffalo City metro municipalities here in the Eastern Cape are still grappling with the aftermath of what has happened. It has affected about 5,600 and something families here in the Eastern Cape, and most of them have been moved to, community halls, because some who come from low-lying areas where, those informal settlements and have submerged in water, some whom their, furniture, personal belongings have been damaged, they had to be moved to a community hall where they can, access facilities like running water, toilets, and the municipalities that have taken these people has promised to make sure that they have food every other day. But we do understand that some have lost, study material for their children, uniforms. So children cannot be able to go to school, have not gone to school these two schooling days this week because of the floods that have happened in these communities. But also when we're speaking to the Premier here in the Eastern Cape about some of the things that propel floods in the Eastern Cape. We're talking infrastructure here. We're talking drains. We're saying that, even though they understand that the drainage system infrastructure is a challenge in the Eastern Cape, they're still facing a challenge where national government is not providing the necessary budget in order to maintain the infrastructure for drainage systems. And so they're also calling on people to, be vigilant and wise, especially in regards to waste management, because people tend to litter things. And all these things, they go on to block the drainage systems here. And also the number of people in the Eastern Cape, the population here in both these municipalities, we're talking Nelson Mandela Bay and Buffalo City, when you're looking at Gqeberha and East London, and both these are large towns in the Eastern Cape, wherein the number of people from rural areas to these towns would be quite high. And therefore, the population is growing. And it's very necessary that we look at, things like your drainage infrastructure compared to the number of people to see if whether or not they correspond. If the drainage system capacity is able to take, the amount of people that are utilizing those facilities in the area. So those are just some of the, things that we had outlined with the provincial government in the area. And also they were saying that they're speaking to the Department of Human Settlements at national level to make sure that land is identified so that these affected people can be moved to, temporary structures, to temporary structures that are going to be built in the land that would have been found in nearby places where the floods have happened, where the disaster is said to have happened.
Yeah, I think, as you give us that overview, it speaks to so many things that consistently when we have these natural disasters, whether it's KZN or the Eastern Cape, issues around infrastructure, issues around maintenance and town planning, which are very much that speak to lack of leadership and lack of proactivity from those that we put into position of government, but also then issues around conscientizing and awareness education of communities as well, where we build, how we build, and also just our own sort of social behaviors when you talk around and you look at things like waste management, for instance, we often are not conscious of that as communities. We don't conduct ourselves accordingly in as far as that is concerned.
Yeah, and what was being said by the Buffalo City Metro Mayor, Princess Fagu, yesterday is that they do try and move people who, there's a common trend in townships and in areas where people just go and build or erect their shacks in open land. And the Buffalo City Metro Mayor was saying that, sometimes the land that you see vacant is not because there are no plans for it to be developed, but it's just not suitable enough for people to build there. And that is why we find people who live in low-lying areas being affected so badly by these floods, because they tend to build in places where they are not supposed to. And they were saying that even though they're going to be moving the more than 3,000 people from these low-lying areas now, in the next few years, they're going to be experiencing the same thing again.
Absolutely.
Because people tend to go back there and build in those areas. So I think maybe there needs to be, even though we're talking about the understanding or conscientizing people about going to those areas, maybe government has to have, ways in which it manages those places where people tend to go.
Absolutely.
Because we've seen over the years that people still go to those places. Then what does government do to make sure that people don't access these areas?
Yeah.
Because you find that this is open land that does not have any fencing. You find that there is no one that comes on the next day immediately when they see someone, piercing in their wood to come and say, no, you're not supposed to build here. No one does that. The people are led to build in those areas, and so much time is, in fact, they're left there to stay in those areas for quite a long time. And only when situations of this nature come, that you'd hear that this place is not where people are supposed to be built.
Yeah.
And you find that in most...
We have to leave it there, unfortunately, for this afternoon. But we thank you for giving us a picture of what's going on. We also want to just quickly cross to Vusi Khumalo out in Otongati in the KZN area. Let's take a quick one.
You are listening to The Full Circle.
It is the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, and we're just touching base with some colleagues. And we've got SABC KZN reporter Vusi Khumalo joining us now, who's currently in Otongati. And we appreciate you for just taking a moment to give us the lay of the land there, Vusi. We woke up today to the news of that freak tornado that ravaged that part of KZN.
Yes, appreciate it. It's a total devastation after the tornado that has now been confirmed that it was indeed a tornado that swept through. That has been confirmed by the meteorologists here in South Africa, saying that it swept through the areas of Tongati, most especially the other ones that have been mostly affected, the townships such as John Ross, where we are currently, before we go to Fairbrie's. Also, the same magnitude of damage that is seen currently on the roofs that have been blown away by a tornado yesterday. It took about, according to the locals, are saying that it took about 15 minutes. It happened exactly at 4:20 in the late afternoon yesterday, resulting in the death of 7 people, including a child. But 30 more deaths happened in.
Vusi, we wish we had more time with you, but just quick one. What kind of help do we know at this stage is needed there in Otongati?
Yeah, the immediate.
Are we losing Vusi? But we completely understand. We know we've seen from the reports that some of the power lines as well as the network towers are down. So connectivity right now can be a bit tricky. Let's move on to stages, pages, screens and more.
Stages, pages, screens and more on The Full Circle.
Professor Sihaugele Ngubane joins me now, Chairman of Academic and Non-Fiction Authors Association of South Africa. So the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture's Publishing Hub is calling all storytellers to submit manuscripts for a chance to be published and receive a grant of 25,000 Rand. Good afternoon to you, Prof.
Good afternoon to you and your listeners.
Thank you for the time. So as we celebrate 30 years of democracy, the Hub has made this call to storytellers and writers. Tell us more.
Yes, this is an exciting moment for the authors in South Africa who were marginalized and suppressed. Now, with this opportunity of making this call for manuscript, it will not only nurture the creativity or the creative industry, but it is all about enriching the social, cultural, and the educational fabric of the nation.
Talk to us about, in terms of the manuscripts, what kind of story or what kind of criteria is being briefed for those who want to submit? I know as a jump off already, it's in all the official languages, but what else?
Yeah, in terms of manuscript submission and the themes, we are at liberty. People can write anything that is significant and relevant for our nation building and social cohesion. So any theme is welcome by the competition.
And in terms of other sort of criteria, is there anything, because I want to make sure we get that in the front of the conversation, is there anything that our storytellers and writers must take heed of?
Yeah, in fact, there are quite a number of criteria that are stipulated from our website, which is www.anfasa.org.za, where we stipulate the length of the submission, which does not apply to children's book, because we also have a category of the narrative non-fiction. For the narrative non-fiction, it's about information sharing and also based on factual. So it is not part of the restriction of 80,000 words per book. It's just that people must have access to the website so that they know exactly the length of the book. And also there is a question of anthologies, because anthologies is a collection of different authors into one book. So I think those people who want to opt for anthologies must appoint an editor who will edit all this work so that it is submitted by one editor on behalf of all the authors that have contributed to short story and poetry anthologies.
In terms of the impact for those within the literature sector and of course publishing, I can imagine that this has a resounding impact in that sector.
Absolutely, you are right, because we are calling for publishers who will come on board to mentor the emerging authors whilst we empower those authors. And also, it's not like we are entering into a competition with existing authors, because we have made a call for any publisher in the country to apply for this grant. Because what will happen now, we will give some money to the publishers to mentor the authors. So it's an opportunity for authors and opportunity for publishers as well. And I think it's quite beneficial or impactful to all people in the value chain, in the book value chain.
I think what you say also speaks to it sort of fostering that symbiotic relationship of knowledge sharing between the author and the publisher, considering that also we have so many young storytellers in the country who just want to know firstly how to tell their stories and how to get those stories published and get them into the hands of readers.
Absolutely, because they need to share their experiences and aspirations. Like you have said when we started this conversation, that it is part of the 30-year celebration. So if young authors can share their experiences, some are born within the democracy, and they must share their experiences, and this is the rightful opportunity for them to express their feelings about the country, about the situation in the social development and socio-economic development, to put it rightly so.
Mm-hmm. Prof, thank you for the time, and we'll reiterate those details. That was Prof. Sihawugele Ngubane, who's the chairman of the Academic and Non-Fiction Authors Association of South Africa. And of course, those manuscript submissions must be in by the 28th of June, and you can go to ANFASA's website, anfasa.co.za. And in terms of the publisher submission deadlines, that is due on the 14th of June. Also, anfasa.co.za, as well as the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture's website, have further information for you in as far as the nitty-gritty of those criteria. 80,000 words is the benchmark for you, but obviously it doesn't apply in certain categories. It is now time for us to get into Kids Corner, which should run us to the top of the hour, and then we'll come back on the other side of 2 o'clock and we'll take a health and wellness focus.
Mama Kitty, I heard Rand Water talking on the radio about how dangerous it is for people to encroach on their pipeline servitude.
Yes, those high-pressure Rand Water pipelines are under the ground distributing megaliters of water. When people build on top of the pipeline, Rand Water is unable to conduct maintenance on the pipeline, which has a negative impact on water provision. Pipelines can burst without warning. People could get seriously injured or worse.
Yes, people can die from a bursting pipe. That is why people need to understand that Rand Water servitude is where a Rand Water pipeline is located. If we build our houses or businesses on a Rand Water servitude, then we are encroaching on that servitude. They say if communities want to know whether they've encroached over servitudes, they should look for the Rand Water beacons.
The beacons indicate the presence of Rand Water pipelines under the ground. They're rectangular, made of concrete, are painted either white or blue, and have the Rand Water logo on them.
Let's take a walk around our area to see if there are any Rand Water beacons, so that we can also tell the neighbors.
Rand Water, celebrating 120 years of existence and still finding new ways to provide clean, portable bulk water.
So, a lady from Air Officini just turned 55, and although I'm still a spring chicken, there's a part of me that envies her, especially since she now qualifies for a Nedbank Electronic Optimum Plus account with capital guaranteed. Talk about FOMI, huh, voice man?
If you mean FOMO, then definitely, boss man. And she can earn up to 12.65% interest. Anyone over 55 can open theirs via the Nedbank Money app. Visit our website for more information. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credits provider. T's and C's apply.
The clock is on a downhill towards the world's most prestigious games, with a wide variety of exhilarating action such as aquatics, athletics, gymnastics, boxing, breakdancing, football, and many more. The 6th of June marks 50 days to the Olympics. The world's elite athletes are all eyeing a podium finish. Hashtag the global battle of great athletes. Experience the Olympic Games Paris 2024 from Friday 26 July until Sunday 11 August. Live on SABC TV channels and SABC radio stations. SABC Sport is the official broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024.
For the love of the game.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
The reason that this is happening, the reason people feel the way they do is because of what happened in 2021. Sham, have things changed in Phoenix since then? I mean, has there been any healing, or is fear still the major sort of emotion at the moment? Is that really the problem here?
Well, I think since 2021, we've been very busy with communities from Bombay, from Inanda, from Zolisha. These were the affected areas. We are having various projects and programs which are currently also happening. And, this kind of thing is going to take a long time to heal. But we're very happy. I mean, in the next 1 week, in June 16, we're having in Inanda, where children from Phoenix would be interacting with Phoenix children from Bombay on the issue of debate. We are hopeful that there is going to be peacing and lasting peace in the near future.
Sham Maharaj, thanks very much indeed. Phoenix Ubuntu Forum Coordinator.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes, 6 to 9 a.m. This program is brought to you by SABC Education, enriching minds, enriching lives.
name is Neosu Malane and I'm 9 years old and I'm from St. Martin's. I fell when I was playing netball and I fractured my ankle twice. As you can see, I'm on crutches. The first thing I did was I tripped on somebody's foot and I fell. I fell on the floor and I cried because it was very sore. If you fall so badly, you can break yourself easily, or you can start bleeding, or you can get rushed to the hospital immediately. When I fell, my coach helped me to the reception and they bandaged me, and after that my mom picked me up from school and she immediately took me to the hospital. When I got to the hospital, they put me in a wheelchair and I went to the room where they check if you're, like the x-ray room, where they check if your foot is fine or not. And they said that I fractured my ankle and I had to put a cast on. No, I don't have my cast anymore, but I refractured my ankle 3 weeks ago, and my doctor said that I mustn't put on my cast, I must just keep it up all the time. Now that I have fractured my ankle, I'm very scared to walk on it. And I wear an ankle guard every day to protect my foot if I fall. When you are riding a bike, you should wear a helmet and all the protective gears for your elbows and your knees. And when you're playing netball, if your knee is sore, you should wear a knee guard. And if your ankle is sore, you should wear ankle guards. And for your arm, I think you shouldn't play. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Yara Ella. I'm 9 years old and I go to St. Martin's School. I have fell off my bike and I had to go to the hospital. When I fell off my bike, I got up, I picked my bike up and I ran back home. I was crying a lot. Some of the things that I do to make sure I don't fall is stay stable on whatever I'm on and be careful. If you fall so badly, then you would probably break a lot of bones. I do not wear any equipment when I'm doing anything fun. Because sometimes I'm really careful and I don't think I really need it.
Hello, my name is Azalea and I'm 8 years old. No, I haven't fell off a bike or a tree. I've never fallen off something because I'm very careful. If I fall off something, then I would either go to someone or I would go to an office or something to put a plaster on it. If you fall so bad, you could break your bones and go to hospital. Sometimes when I'm doing some activities, I do wear some protection gear. When I do stuff with bees, then I wear some suit so that the bees don't sting me. Children like myself have to be careful to not make sure to fall.
Hello, this is Luca to SAFM, and I have fallen off a bike and I really hurt myself badly. The first thing I did was cry and freak out. So I was going down this steep ramp because I didn't want to ride my bike, but then when I saw this ramp, then I wanted to ride it, but it was this giant like downhill hill, and it was so big, and then I just flipped over and I cracked my head. It gashed, and then I was bleeding everywhere. And then, and now what I do to prevent it is I wear helmets, and I don't ride so fast, and I don't ride downhill.
Hi, my name is Gabby Maya, and I go to Brackenhurst Primary School. I'm in grade 4. So I have failed once. When I was walking backwards on the stairs, there was a crazy idea because I was busy talking to my friends, and then I fell. I tripped because I couldn't. I stepped over one step, then I tripped and fell. Then the first thing I did is actually cry because my knee was painful, but it got better eventually because my teacher helped me. So I would advise someone how to not fall off the stairs. So when you're walking down the stairs, even though you're talking to your friend, you must look straight and look straight. So yeah, look straight. Then hold on the walking rail. Yeah. Then do not run, because if you run, you're rushing yourself and then you're gonna trip and fall. Make sure or no pushing as well, because that's mean.
Hello friends! Today let's discuss an important topic: preventing falls to stay safe and healthy. Falls can happen to anyone and can lead to serious injuries. However, there are simple ways to avoid them and ensure safety. To start, let's understand why falls are risky. Falling can result in bruises, broken bones, or head injuries. These injuries can be painful and may require medical attention. It's important to be cautious while playing, running, or engaging in activities like biking, as these are situations where falls are more likely to occur. One common fall scenario is when we ride our bikes as kids. To stay safe, always wear a helmet while biking. Helmets protect your head in case of a fall and can prevent severe injuries. Ensure your bike fits you properly and that the brakes are in good working condition before riding. Opt for smooth, even surfaces and avoid busy streets or rough terrains. Wearing bright clothes can enhance visibility, further ensuring your safety. There are other ways to prevent falls as well. Remember to tie your shoelace securely to avoid tripping. Keep your surroundings tidy by putting away items like books to prevent tripping hazards. When using stairs, hold on to the handrail and take your time. Being cautious and attentive to your environment can help you steer clear of falls and maintain your well-being. And always remember, staying safe leads to more fun and fewer injuries.
This program was brought to you by SABC Education. Enriching minds, enriching lives. The Chill Zone with Bertha Charuma.
When do you know this is not good for me? This is not healthy at all.
One of the things that we often talk about is you've got to look at your ratio of good times versus bad times and look at the extent of which the bad times are. All relationships will have certain ups and downs, but you shouldn't be spending more time crying. You shouldn't be spending more time sad, unhappy because of the relationship than you do happy. People tend to focus too much on the good and ignore the bad, and that's the problem.
Linda Yende joining us, relationship coach.
Bertha Charuma, Fridays 8 p.m. to 12 a.m.
Top stories at 2. SA's economy slightly shrinks in the first quarter and operations remain suspended at Sibanye Stillwater in Rustenburg. Good afternoon, I'm Eva Chipa. Economist Laura Campbell says structural challenges are continuing to undercut economic growth in the country. Her comment follows Stats SA's newly released data, which indicates the country's economy shrank by 0.1% in the first quarter of this year. Stats SA also revised last year's fourth quarter gross domestic product from 0.1% to 0.3%. Campbell explains the implications of the new data.
When adjusting for inflation, South Africa's economy is just slightly larger than it was in 2018. And this implies that economic growth is not keeping up with population growth of around 1.5%. Despite the improvement that we've seen in load shedding, South Africa continues to face structural issues which need to be addressed in order to lift South Africa's economic growth to a higher path.
The KZN Premier, Nomusa Dube says the death toll from yesterday's storm has risen to 10, including 3 people that were killed outside the eThekwini metro. In Utungati, which was badly hit by what locals are calling a tornado, teams are clearing up roads of debris so that aid can reach people who have lost their homes. Dube explains how those affected are being further assisted.
We are trying to source immediate accommodation
for people. Last night they used community halls, but we do not encourage people to use community halls. We'd like to use temporary residentials like we've done before. That's what we're trying to work with our mayor and the Tekwini municipality. And once we know the correct numbers, we are going to be moving to that direction.
In other news, operations are still suspended at the Sibanye Stillwater in Rustenburg in the northwest after 200 mine workers embarked on a sit-in at the Kwezi shaft yesterday morning. The mine workers' action is over a share ownership scheme for Kruendal employees. Sibanye Stillwater's Executive Vice President, James Walstead, says management and trade unions AMCU and NUM will meet today to discuss the mine workers' concerns.
Obviously, we've had discussions with them before they even went down. We've had the union officials trying to exhort them to come up as well. And this morning, we're expecting the national leadership of AMCU and NUM to come to the operations. And hopefully, they will be able to get the employees to come up from underground. Because, you know, the action that they've taken is illegal. It's not protected. And we're concerned about the safety and wellness of our employees. There are established protocols and engagement mechanisms which should be followed, including through the unions, but have not been followed in this case.
The Eastern Cape Department of Roads and Transport has closed 2 more roads as snow continues to fall in parts of the province. This is additional to the Penhoek Pass and the N6 between Komani and Jamestown. Backley Pass on the R58 and Wapatsburg Pass on the R61 between Graaf-Reinet and Mwa, formerly known as Cradock, which were also closed in the morning. Spokesperson for the department, Unati Bingos, explains.
The heavy snowfalls that have forced the closure of these 3 mountain passes have added another dimension to the already challenging driving conditions in the Eastern Cape due to the past couple of days' heavy rainfalls that have left the soil saturated with fears of mud slides in some areas. And we are calling on you as a road user to be extra vigilant and respect the restrictions that are there for you at the moment.
Business leaders have urged political parties to accept the 2024 election results and work towards forming a stable coalition that puts the country first. This as the ANC has embarked on coalition negotiations with opposition parties after losing its parliamentary majority for the first time since 1994. The CEO of Business Leadership South Africa, Busisiwe Mavuso, says this is a very difficult time for the country.
We don't want to see a chaotic coalition. We don't want to see strained and ineffective decision making. We don't want to see disunity within the coalition. We don't want to see a coalition that is going to bring in a failure to implement even the most basic of services. I mean, think about the city of Joburg, 8 mayors in 2 years. You know, it has been absolutely chaotic. And coalition can actually work. You just need to make sure that you get partners that will be of the single-minded focus. You know, you need to make sure that the coalition has a willingness to compromise in favor of the greater good.
And lastly, looking further afield, the US has circulated a new draft Security Council resolution that seeks to support a new ceasefire proposal and hostage deal in Gaza. President Joe Biden on Friday announced a new 3-phase plan aimed at ending the nearly 8-month war, free all remaining hostages held by Hamas, and expanding humanitarian aid into the destroyed enclave. Sharon Bryce-Peace reports.
The draft welcomes the new proposal announced May 31st and calls only on Hamas to accept it fully and implement the terms without delay. It makes no mention of Israel's acceptance, despite reported divides on the agreement within the current coalition government there. In a statement, U.S. Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield said numerous leaders and governments had endorsed the plan and called on the Security Council to join them in calling for the implementation of the deal without delay and without further conditions. Sherman Bryce-Peace, SABC News, New York.
Recapping the top story at 2, economist Laura Campbell says structural challenges are continuing to undercut economic growth in the country. Her comment follows Stats SA's newly released data, which indicates the country's economy shrank by 0.1% in the first quarter of this year. I'll be back at the bottom of the hour. For SFM News, I'm Eva Chipa.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Puma nankosi ndiyaphuma ndifihle kwingozi nentsha nayo yonke imimoya thatha indawo njengosomandla sindisa impilo yami kwababantu abalunganga ngoba namhlanje ndibonile uba silwe nenyama silwa nemimoya namhlanje ndibonile uba asilwe nabantu thina silwa nemimoya asilwe nabantu thina asilwe nabantu thina silwa nemimoya asilwe nabantu thina asilwe nabantu thina silwa nemimoya silwa nemimoya silwa ezinye izinto azilungi noba ungazama zibanjwe emoyeni ezimfazwe sizibonileyo aziqali namhlanje ziqale emoyeni ngoba emoyeni kuyaliwa emoyeni 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 kuyaliwa asilwi nabantu asilwi nabantu silwa nemimoya asilwi nabantu asilwi nabantu silwa nemimoya 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 silwa nemimoya
It is Nati. Imimoya is the name of this particular one, bringing us to 10 minutes past 2 o'clock on this fine Tuesday. And as per promise, on the other side of 2 on Tuesdays, we have a health and wellness focus. And today, we are continuing on our theme alongside Child Protection Week, which commenced a few days ago and is running until the end of the week. And we are focusing on something I've never heard about, right? It's respiratory syncytial virus and its impact on childhood health. And of course, I know nothing about this, so we thought we'd enlist the help of pediatrician Dr. Candice Mwandla to join us in conversation. It's quite the tongue twister for those of us who've never heard of it before. RSV for short. How are you doing, Dr. Candice?
I am very well, thank you, Bridget. Hello to you and to your listeners.
I can see why you're a pediatrician. I can hear it in the voice. Thank you so much for the time. So, respiratory syncytial virus. What is that? And am I even pronouncing it correctly?
You've said it correctly, Bridget. So it's respiratory syncytial virus. It is in short RSV. It's one of the respiratory viruses that we see, which is seasonal, and we are seeing it at this time, particularly in the colder months of the year.
Mm-hmm. Now, what is it exactly? What exactly is RSV?
So RSV is but just one of the infections or viruses that can cause infections in our respiratory tract, right? The respiratory tract, remember, will be, all the way from your nostrils right down into the chest.
Okay.
So that is where it affects. It is what would cause things like your flu-like symptoms, essentially. But we'll probably get more into that.
Okay, yeah. I mean, let's get into it right now. So you say it's a virus, by the way. Let's make the distinction because, we are not doctors by any stretch of the imagination. Let's make the distinction between virus and bacteria.
Sure. So viruses tend to have a different structure to bacteria. Bacteria will have a cell wall and will be living organisms per se. Whereas viruses are bodies, essentially. You can imagine them as bodies that are floating around, wanting to attach themselves to a host, which is the human body, human cells, and they then use the cells to grow and multiply. And so that is the class that respiratory syncytial virus falls under. You can imagine something like, although it's not a parasite and parasites are different to viruses, it's a type of parasite.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now that we've got that distinction, let's get into it. Let's get into the symptoms, because when you talk things, viruses that affect throats, respiratory, throat, nose, ear, and that entire system, a lot of us automatically jump straight to things that are affiliated with influenza. But is this some type of influenza?
Yes. So it is a virus which causes illnesses like influenza would cause. Okay. Of course, there's many other viruses that cause similar symptoms to RSV and to flu. And this is, where it becomes difficult for us as healthcare practitioners, because a patient or a child will come before us with symptoms and, it's not something we will be able to say it is caused by this particular virus. We'd have to run tests to be able to tell which virus it is. And, of course, the other issue with these viruses is that we do not have necessarily antibiotics against them or antivirals against them. We probably have one or two that we can treat. And so diagnosing it in a child that's admitted does become important, because we can then target that particular virus. RSV is one of those that does not have an antiviral medication, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. Interesting. And I want to double back to that. Let's talk, even before we even get to the treatment factor of it, let's talk about the symptoms, because you say it can be a bit difficult to differentiate between what is what until there's some kind of testing. So what symptoms are we looking at here that cause confusion, or symptoms that could suggest that it's more than just the common cold or the common flu?
That's a very, very important question, and an important differentiation to mention, because common cold, like the word suggests, is common and doesn't make you as unwell as the RSV types of viruses and influenza virus per se. So when we speak of flu-like illness or RSV, the symptoms tend to be worse. We see more severe symptoms over and above the runny nose and cough. So that's the common ground. Common cold and RSV, you will have a runny nose and cough. Over and above that, the lungs can be involved. So when you start seeing chest infections like wheezing, difficulty breathing, generally where the child is feeling completely unwell, where the baby is not feeding well, refuses to eat, has vomiting, for example, and you see symptoms outside even of the respiratory tract, such as the heart being affected, the head, the liver. But again, this is worst case scenario and very rare in RSV. But this is where we see a differentiation between RSV and the common cold.
Okay. Now, by way of testing, you mentioned that you can only confirm diagnosis of RSV once you've tested. What do those tests look like?
The testing for RSV would include a swab. So kind of like, in fact, very much like COVID time, where you would need a swab to confirm COVID. That's exactly how then RSV diagnosis would work. So amongst the tests to look for general functioning of the body when a child is admitted for RSV, we would also swab the nostrils or the throat, and that's how we're able to differentiate and find specifically which virus is causing the symptoms.
Yeah. And are children and infants of particular ages particularly at a higher risk for RSV?
Indeed. There is high-risk infants and children.
Okay.
And I think it's important, again, also to define who is high risk. Having said that, RSV tends to love affecting children who are well-looking, healthy, and chubby.
Okay.
For an unknown reason to us as medical practitioners. But we do see RSV affecting and even going into the chest of these bouncy, bubbly, chubby children. However, high-risk infants do tend to get very unwell, have more severe symptoms and signs when they get RSV. And so high risk would include your prematurely born children. Okay, so especially those born before the age of 32 weeks or the gestation of 32 weeks. So those are your 1 kilogram, 1.4 kilo, for example, premature children. Those who have chronic lung diseases and significant cardiac defects. So those are your high-risk children and infants that if they contract RSV, they tend to get sicker than the rest of the population and may need to get into, hospitalization and ventilation, and it really becomes life-threatening for them in some instances.
Yeah. Interesting because, when you talk about the sort of different categories of babies and infants, premature babies before 32 weeks, chronic lung heart disease babies and infants, it almost makes sense there, right? Because it speaks to a vulnerability and a compromised system. And then you put the spanner in the works by saying, the bouncy, chubby looking, I look like I'm going to score 10 out of 10 for my health. Little cute chubby cheeked baby could also be high risk for unknown reasons.
Absolutely. That's what makes RSV an important infection, in any health setting. And we are looking for ways of preventing it. There are ways that are being tested and ways that are available to test it. And I must also mention, though, that amongst the vulnerable, so you touched correctly on the immunity. So it's immature immune systems or immune systems that are compromised. Those are the children that get affected most. So it does include young infants who are under the age of 2 months as well, unfortunately, and newborns. If they do contract RSV, they fall under the high-risk group as well.
Wow. Now, tell me, are there any measures or what measures can parents then take to protect their little ones from contracting RSV?
Okay, so
if there are any, Dr. Candice.
Absolutely. There definitely are, Bridget. So I just want to mention that, remember, we saw a decline in a lot of our respiratory viral infections during COVID. Okay, so we actually saw this in the hospitals, in the practices, And this was because of the measures that were taken during COVID. And so it goes back to the good hygiene practices. All right. So I'll mention frequent hand washing with soap and water. RSV, just like COVID, is spread through contact and also through droplets. And so the measures, hand washing, sanitizing, our hands, and also avoiding close contact with sick individuals. So sick kids and adults can actually keep away from going to school and to work when they are unwell, right? And proper cough and sneeze etiquette becomes important. So parents, let's teach our little ones, as hard as it is for them to grasp, but let's teach them from early on how to properly cough and sneeze inside the elbow or into a tissue, which they'll discard soon afterwards if they're older, avoiding touching our faces and noses if the hands are not clean. Obviously it's difficult habits to teach, but let's teach because they will grasp it at some point. And also disinfecting surfaces and objects that are frequently touched is another preventive measure. And just generally things that, we need to do, keeping infants away from very crowded places, especially during this season. And using protective measures like masks for older children and adults who absolutely have to be at work when, there's a high risk of them infecting other people.
I think, with the preventative measures that you've just mentioned, you've just given a lot of the grandparents who listen to our show further reason why that isolation period that a lot of African parents and Asian parents like to adhere to, the old ways of a baby will not be out until their immune system is thoroughly intact. And will be confined to the house with limited visitation for the first couple of months. You've just given them more reason to be like, actually stay at home.
Yeah, that is something I often do think about. You'll be surprised how many, of the old wives' ways medicine actually agrees with.
Right? It's a fine balance, a fine balance indeed. And then let's talk about once you've been diagnosed, once your little one has been diagnosed, there's a confirmation that they've got this respiratory syncytial virus, RSV. What then becomes treatment? Because you said there aren't necessarily antibiotics to treat this.
Yes, unfortunately, there's very limited treatment. But that is good news as well, in that we allow the body to fight the infection by we support the body, is what the treatment of RSV mainly consists of. Okay? So there's going to be your general measures that, we will advise parents to take. Such as watching for worsening of symptoms. Because with RSV and a lot of the other respiratory viruses, what they tend to do is there'll be mild symptoms, and then in between there'll be a period of getting worse before the child starts getting better. It sounds obvious, but there's a period where it gets severe. Okay, and so just to watch for those where it can get severe, to watch for danger signs, all right? But as far as treatment is concerned, it's supportive. And so ensuring that the child is well hydrated. If they're not feeding, they should be, and not drinking any fluids, they should get some form of hydration. It may mean getting, admitted for that to happen. Also humidified air, and some homes will have humidifiers, right?
Yeah.
And so humidifiers are good, humidifiers are bad. In that some children, some adults will respond well to having humidifiers in the house, whereas others, unfortunately, this does not go well with them. So, the jury is out on humidified air. But it can help. If there is an improvement in symptoms, then sure, humidified air has been seen to make a difference in some. Nasal drops and sprays for the congested noses, and suctioning as well. That's part of the treatment. So as I mentioned, treatment may involve hospitalization. It may involve using nebulizers at home, okay, or other treatments that the doctor may prescribe, and the effectiveness does vary from child to child. Okay, but for parents, it's really ensuring getting plenty of rest for the child and fluids. The child should get plenty of rest, and using those saline drops, which tends to also decrease the viral load in your respiratory tract. So saline drops actually do assist, and monitoring the symptoms closely. Seeking medical advice if the symptoms worsen.
Okay. I mean, it sounds like a little bit of this, but medically, and a little bit of that. And there's no sort of mom and dad. You just have to be vigilant when you see that there is a cold flu that's not quite presenting like a cold flu. You quickly run to a pediatrician and get the necessary tests done, and then we take it from there.
Something like that. Something like that with a touch of patience as well. Because the resolution or improving, getting better in patients or children who have had RSV, it can take anything from 1 week up to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So it takes a while, and usually the last thing to go is going to be the runny nose and cough. So just to be patient and to support the child through that.
Yeah.
And not to panic and think, oh, they still have the RSV. They're getting better. It just takes a while.
It takes a little bit of time. Dr. Candace, we appreciate the time with you today. That was Dr. Candace Mwandla, who is a pediatrician. I hope if you are listening and you're a parent to a little one, that maybe you got some tips and some guidance there. And if things are looking like they're getting a little bit worse, go seek out the pediatrician's advice. And then, of course, as you heard Dr. Candace also saying, just follow those management protocols that your doctor will put in place, and keep a vigilant eye on your little one. Make sure they get lots of rest, lots of hydration, and try to stay calm as mom and dad, because with RSV, it sounds like it can get a little worse before it gets a little better. And then it is the season, by the way. It is the season. My team has been masking and sanitizing. I've been sanitizing since COVID. I've never stopped. And my team has been masking and sanitizing for the last 2 weeks now. Even when they are in the confines of just the 3-4 of us, they are still doing it, because there's a nasty flu that is out there that's roaming around. So we're all just trying to take the necessary measures. And remember to go get your flu jab. We had that conversation. Go get the flu jab before you get sick. And if you've had flu already, you currently had flu, it was advised that you wait a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, just for the flu to work its way out of you. And then you go get your jab to safeguard you for the rest of the season. It's time for the headline news.
In your news making headlines for this hour, KZN Health MEC Noma Gugusimelane says off-duty healthcare workers were called in, and healthcare workers from other areas were brought in last night to deal with the influx of injured people after a tornado hit Utongati north of Durban. She says 120 people were treated at a local clinic last night, while another 69 people came to the clinic with minor injuries this morning. In other news, economist Laura Campbell says structural challenges are continuing to undercut economic growth in the country. Her comment follows Stats SA's newly released data, which indicates that the country's economy shrank by 0.1% in the first quarter of this year. And lastly, the president of Namibia, Nangolo Mbumba, has congratulated South Africa for holding peaceful elections that saw the governing ANC's majority reduced. The ANC has strong ties with SAPO of Namibia, one of the liberation organizations in Southern Africa. I'll be back at 3 with more news. For SFM News, I'm Eva Chipa.
Arts, culture, and robust conversations with Bridget Masinga.
I did say that on the other side of 2, we're going to take a health and wellness focus, and now we're catching up with Marlene van Berg, who is with Netcare's Akiso Montrose Manor and Crescent Clinic. And we're having a conversation around the intricate webs of eating disorders that are oftentimes hidden in plain sight. And there seems to be a few of what is termed invisible eating disorders. And you'd be surprised at the fact that, often overlooked in this conversation are men. And we'll get into that. Marlene, how are you doing?
Hi, Bridget, thank you. Lovely to be with you. And I love the fact that you said intricate web. It is literally what an eating disorder is. So I'm very happy to have this conversation with you today.
I feel like as if a lot of us aren't really, we're not clued in. Unless you've had the unfortunate first-hand experience or you've had to support someone along their journey. But a lot of us are not clued in as far as eating disorders, let alone what triggers them.
Exactly, and I think the name is quite misleading. They're eating disorders, so we focus on eating, when eating is just a part of this bigger condition. What we're actually speaking about when we speak about eating disorders is an unhealthy relationship with food, with eating, with weight, with body, and that all of that originates from an unmet emotional, painful core. So it's very easy to go, oh, you're overeating or you're undereating, and then we just look at this behavior, or maybe looking at weight, oh, you're so underweight, but that's a complete simplification of the intricate web that you are speaking of.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it sounds very complex because, as you say, it's an unhealthy relationship with food, which speaks to so many other things, psycho, social, emotional, mental.
Exactly. So what actually happens is that you have difficulties in that biopsychosocial mental space, and rather than dealing with it or facing it, it is projected into, let's say, into undereating, or what we know a lot of our males in South Africa is sitting with is overeating, or maybe the current kind of layman's term of big anorexia, so wanting to build muscle and wanting to be fit. So in a similar way that an alcoholic will use alcohol to cope with whatever life problems they are sitting with, someone with an eating disorder uses this relationship with food, body weight, exercise to not feel their feelings.
Shoo, quite interesting. And okay, so let's try and understand some of the various characters or categories that are at play here. Because already you just threw me with big anorexia.
Yes. So actually we're sitting with anorexia nervosa, which I think a lot of people are aware of. It's not necessarily a weight category, but a refusal to gain weight, a fear of gaining weight. Bulimia nervosa, where I'll still eat normally, maybe also binge, but I will compensate for it, whether it's with laxatives or exercise or throwing up. Then we've got binge eating disorder, so I am having the same overeating, and it's really important to make a distinction here. It's not us emotionally eating or finishing a whole slab of chocolate, but it is actually about eating and feeling no control, feeling shame and guilt afterwards. So that's really the problem with that. And then everything that fits in between of those conditions that will also be classified as an eating disorder.
Talk to us about the early signs, because, for instance, in this final category that you mentioned, a friend of mine happened to tweet just 2 weeks ago that she was out having dinner with some friends. And I'm sharing because it was on Twitter, having dinner with some friends, and then she felt guilty about having to finish her food, even though she was full, but she felt a sense of guilt and compelled to finish the food. So my natural response was, I hope I'm not making a big deal out of this by responding in this way, disclaimer first. But I'm like, for me, the issue lays in, why did you feel guilty?
Exactly. Exactly. It's almost normal and normative to food has no emotion connected to it. So guilt and shame and overwhelm and anxiety around food, those are big warning signs for us to really ask what is going on and why is this relationship with food tainted with emotions. I mean, we're happy when we eat, or it's just a normal thing that happens in our life. It's not supposed to be guilt or emotions.
Yeah. What are the signs that we should be looking out for? I mean, I know it's hard to sort of narrow them down because we're looking at different categories, but perhaps just some guidelines as to what we should start being conscious of, or even what we should be asking ourselves if we think we might have an unhealthy relationship with food one way or another.
There is stuff that is quite common for all eating disorders. So you look at a change of behavior in food, eating, you look at an obsession or a sudden over-interest or a sudden under-interest in food. You are looking at food rules, behavior, like you say with this friend, that just seems odd. Why are you suddenly wanting to eat with a teaspoon? Or why are you suddenly not finishing a meal? And it's looking for those absurdities that has been a change in individuals from before. You are looking for actually emotional distress or dysfunction in other areas of their lives. So they will, for example, become quite anxious about a meal because I can't go out with friends, where are we going to eat? And so that concern or that emotional increase would also point us to some problematic behavior. As you say, there's lists and lists of symptoms to look out for. But I would say that a person's sudden change in how they view or approach food or weight or exercise should always be met with some suspicion.
Yeah. And interesting, right? We've got this whole health craze. Health craze has taken over social media. Everyone's trying to be healthy and hot, but there's a danger to that as well with the orthorexia. Is it nervosa? Oh, these words today.
Exactly. Orthorexia. Yes, I think orthorexia is often a sign that a later eating disorder might develop. You are absolutely right. Being healthy, exercising, eating healthy, it's all normal. It's all part of life. We should all engage in it. But when that becomes problematic, when it becomes an obsession, when it becomes an over-focus, and I cannot... parents that are starting to say to children, don't eat this, that is not good for you, this is not great for you. There's so much misinformation about food or exercise or health. And when I cling to that from a space of anxiety or fear or threat, and that becomes my lifestyle, it becomes very problematic.
Marlene, what you just said there as well about sort of your plea to parents, because the languaging speaks to that association we have with food.
We have so many clients that say, but my mom doesn't eat this, so why should I? Or my mom said I shouldn't. Or even more scarier, my mom doesn't say that I should change weight, or my mom doesn't say I should exercise more, but she exercises all the time, and she looks in the mirror all the time. We need to remember that children learn through osmosis. They see what we do rather than what we say. So we can say, be body positive. But if I am exercising every day and arranging holidays around exercise, then obviously that child is picking that up and thinking that is normative behavior and thinking that a focus on body or weight or a certain shape is what they need to aspire to. So that's where orthorexia is really, really, really dangerous, because it's not just wanting to be healthy. It's again this thing of I'm taking all of the emotional difficulties, the past traumas that I'm experiencing, I'm not dealing with them. I am just going to the gym and eating 3 nuts a day.
How do we then strike the balance? How do we strike the balance, considering also the social messaging that we get? I mean, we laugh about the 3 nuts. I remember years ago, Ryan Seacrest, who's been, the presenter of Idols, been very vocal about his growing up chubby and having an unhealthy relationship with food before he decided to go healthy. And in fact, he's one of those people who always stick out in my head when the health nuts talk about cashews and walnuts. And I go, I remember Ryan Seacrest saying he counts them out till 10.
Yeah. So that's something that you almost immediately go like, but that's not normal. Yeah. No one counts out their nuts. That's really weird. So when we speak, and it's in your wording, you say, how do we find a balance? We find a balance by going back to what is normal behavior, and we find what is moderate. So it's definitely not normal to eat takeout food every day or 4 days a week, but it is appropriate to have takeaways maybe over the weekend or somewhere during the week if it's a busy week. Same thing with desserts, and same thing with sweet stuff or sugar. Some of these misinformations and all of these movies that come out, and then we stop eating this completely. Our bodies are designed for moderation in exercise, and your body actually knows where it wants to be. So you're kind of changing that pattern because of your own will and sense is problematic. So a good balanced meal. We advocate for 3 meals, 3 snacks. We advocate for moderate exercise and movement that is mentally and socially healthy for you. And if you're not fitting that mold, then that's something to look at.
Absolutely. Just by way of resource, is there any resource, some reading maybe online that you can direct folks to, just so that they can get even more information and maybe even start drilling down on some of those questions we asked, so that they are in a position to identify whether or not they should be seeking professional help?
They are definitely more than welcome to go to our website and have a look there. It's montrosemanor.co.za or akiso.co.za, and there's a lot of information on there, as well as avenues to contact us. So if people are suspicious and concerned and worried about themselves or a loved one, it's really best to have a conversation with a professional individual and see what kind of intervention or support you might need. It might need that you just need a bit of therapy and help you process things. Might be that you need an admission, might need to be that we help you find some sort of balance in your life. But we would be able to support and direct people to get the help that they need on the level of intervention that they need it in.
And I know I've got to wrap because my colleague Ashraf is standing by, but I don't want to wrap without asking you this. We touched briefly on males. And we know when we talk eating disorders, we tend to focus more on women and children, right? Because we are the aesthetic-driven gender, they tell us. But important for males also to clue in on this conversation for themselves.
Absolutely. Just what you're saying about the aesthetic-driven gender, it's not true anymore, actually, because there's been a shift in generations where our appearance and how we look, and especially what we spoke about, orthorexia, becomes quite a big thing for any gender, and that is becoming problematic. We are more and more seeing eating disorders occur in men. The problem that we have in all mental health is that male mental health is so stigmatized. So, and then it's also, if a 14-year-old girl suddenly loses a lot of weight, then we are very concerned. When an 18-year-old boy starts to gym excessively and start to drink protein shakes and start to buff up, we often go, oh, well done you are so self-disciplined, not really understanding the emotional depth or the reason. In the clinic we always say it's not what you do, but it is why you do it. And that is really something that we need to be more, that we need to ask men, is why are you so obsessed with this, or why are you overeating or undereating or running 100 miles a day? Those are questions that we need to start to ask people. I've got friends that, they are beautiful athletes, but also you want to ask them why, because it has become quite toxic in their lives as a method of coping that is turning against them.
Absolutely. Marlene, appreciate the time. That was Marlene Vandenberg, who is with Netcare's Akiso Montrose Manor. And of course, you can go to montrosemanor.co.za if you want to get more resources around this conversation. It's 2:45. Ashraf is coming through to let us know what's coming up on the National Pulse. And then we'll come back and wrap it up from our end.
Get up to 10.75% per annum with an 18-month ABSA Dynamic Fixed Deposit account, which allows you to build your financial future. Plus, you'll earn an additional interest rate if you join ABSA Rewards. Join tens of thousands of South Africans who've already taken advantage of this account's flexibility. Open yours now on our banking app or absa.co.za to maximize returns. Your story matters. ABSA is an authorized financial services and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
The clock is on a downhill towards the world's most prestigious games, with a wide variety of exhilarating action such as aquatics, athletics, gymnastics, boxing, breakdancing, football, and many more. The 6th of June marks 50 days to the Olympics. The world's elite athletes are all eyeing a podium finish. Hashtag the global battle of great athletes. Experience the Olympic Games Paris 2024 from Friday 26 July until Sunday 11 August. Live on SABC TV channels and SABC radio stations. SABC Sport is the official broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. For the love of the game.
You are listening to The Full Circle.
All right, as we prepare to wrap up on our end, Ashraf's coming through to let us know what's coming up on his end. How are you doing?
I'm very good, and I'm very interested, by the way, in the hospital story, because I've had the privilege of meeting the guest in the lift coming up.
Now. Okay.
So we've had a pre-interview interview.
Oh, okay.
So I'm very interested in that. But anyway.
Well, maybe I'll just sit back and let you do it.
Yeah,
for
maybe
me.
you can just chill.
What's coming up today?
Well, we'll have a reflection from the IEC around all those complaints that apparently haven't been answered. So we'll talk to them, which I think is really important. India has been having their elections. You know, it takes 6 weeks before they get the results. It does. It's a country as big as...
Number of people,
Well, 20 times, 100 times bigger than South Africa, something like that. Anyway, so the results are imminent. We'll talk about that. South Africa's economy, the GDP shrunk again, another 0.1%, which is not good at all. So we'll talk about that. And then relevant to growing your own economy, the using AI for business. We'll talk about for business growth. We'll talk about all those things. And just by the way, if you want to know, it's my birthday as well. So I thought just tell you that.
Is it your birthday today?
There's no cake. You know,
Happy
guys don't do those type of things. But anyway, there we are.
Well, listen, happy birthday to you. You
Thank
must
you.
have a glorious day. I would have been telling everybody from like 2 weeks ago that it's my birthday.
Would
coming
you?
Up. Yeah, I'm that person.
Like my birthday month story.
Yes,
my
I'm
birthday
that
month,
person.
my birthday week, my
so
birthday
we can have
whatever.
balloons and things
Yeah,
for
okay.
you, you know? Well, happy birthday. And please, when you talk to the IEC, do find out for us, why were they drilling down so heavily when people were saying, but you've got a couple of days and you can sort out these queries?
Well, that's the key question.
Okay, I'll be listening.
I've got a
with
feeling
keen
they may say
eye.
something crazy like the SABC cameraman needed to come back to studios. I don't know.
Because we needed
We'll
streaming.
find out.
All
We'll
right.
find out. Yeah.
Ashraf is coming through 3 to 6 on the National Pulse.
Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
Orlando Pirates have now won 10 Nedbank Cup trophies. Of the 10 times Pirates have won the trophy, under what names did the competition run? So give me the names of the trophy.
Michael, I can only recall 2 names. It's the Mainstay Cup and the Bob Safe Super Bowl.
I think it's Mainstay Cup, Benson and Hentis, and Life Challenge. I forget the other name.
The Life Challenge Cup, indeed. Pirates won it 3 years in a row, 73, 74 and 75. The Mainstay Cup in 1980. The Bob Safe Super Bowl in 88 and 96. And the Nedbank Cup 4 times.
Top Sport on SAFM.
Hi there, John Gericke here, presenter of The Weekend, a music show between 10 and midnight on a Saturday and Sunday night. I got into big trouble for the last promo that I made telling you about my show. Apparently, the boss says that I can't say and what. So, I will promise to keep it clean in this promo. So, no more. And all I'm going to do is tell you about the great music that I will be playing between 10 and midnight on Saturday and Sunday nights.
Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
All right, so literally in our last 10 minutes, we've got the CEO of a hospital, Nkululeko Khumalo McKay, joining us. And firstly, let's start by, and how are you?
Very well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming through.
Super.
Hospital. I mean, the name kind of says it, but
Absolutely.
we'll allow you to elaborate.
Absolutely. In fact, the name is a name that was probably coined by the World Health Organization many, many years ago on a white paper, which essentially talks to how there's a huge shortage of and a consistent shortage of infrastructure and hospitals, essentially, for the growing population that we have. And essentially, we'd need to look at different alternatives and methods on providing healthcare services, especially to those that are totally underserviced in emerging economies such as ourselves.
Yeah. And then comes in technological advancement and innovation in your space.
Yeah.
All right. So tell me a bit about the app, right? Because you guys have now designed quite the revolutionary app, I'm told. What makes it stand out a cream above the rest?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The name itself, to begin with, and our alignment to the SDG goals and, global healthcare aspirations. Secondly, we've got a free feature on the platform, on the website, as well as in the application itself, which essentially is an AI-driven, machine learning-driven piece of technology where you're able to very freely request for medical advice of different kind. So you could, even with your previous show with health disorders, you could query the bot and just find out, if I'm seeing this, what could it mean from a symptom perspective. It obviously is limited. It's not a doctor in and of itself.
Yeah.
But I mean, we all know the power of AI and the advancements that are happening in that space that are enabling us to now have what we have. So I think that's one of the things that truly set us apart amongst many.
Yeah, and people are always interested, right? When we talk about sort of technology, particularly AI infiltrating certain spaces, the question arises around how accurate is the information or the data that's now going to be relayed to me.
100%, and that's why in and of itself it's not the end result. So it is meant to facilitate those initial health inquiries, and then we point you to the healthcare providers, which is what we are about, the home hospital concept, to say bringing healthcare to the home, enabling convenient accessibility, reach for those who don't have reach, to professionals, specialists, doctors, caregivers and nurses, virtually and in the home. So once the chatbot reaches its threshold, so to speak, you then should be consulting a real professional.
Yeah, I like that, a real professional.
Yeah.
Walk us through the experience, what it looks like for a potential customer or patient. So we onboard your ChatGPT via what, WhatsApp? Or a separate app that we download?
It's a simple application. If you're using an iPhone, it's the App Store. If you're using an Android phone, it's the Play Store. You download the application. It's a very simple two-step process to register on. And once you've registered on that two-step, you authorize that you are indeed the person that's registering. If you're a provider, we take a little bit longer to be able to verify your qualifications, your experience. We verify, college that you went to, if it's a med school or if it's a college for caregivers, etc. And then we authorize that now you can provide services on the platform. So currently we're on a drive to recruit those health providers. We've got quite a number of caregivers and nurses that have come on board, but the unemployed doctors are just not responsive. So I'm hoping that they will hear our plea and come and register so that they can begin to get access to patients that need their services, and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. I mean, an interesting element that, right? Sort of bridging that gap. We saw the doctors striking earlier in the year, rightfully so, and here's a platform and an opportunity. So for service providers, so I'm familiar with some clinics who have got applications developed, but they're more administrative, right? You come in, you find doctors in your proximity, your geographical location, whatever area of professionalism, expertise, your files are all loaded on your profile. So as the doctor gets your results, they load them on, you go to the app, you don't have to go to the office, you don't have to call them, everything is via that application. Now, when I'm getting services from my doctor, because I like to be a skeptic and I like interfacing with human beings.
Yes. Absolutely.
What is that experience and what has the feedback been from both service providers and patients who've used your app?
Yeah, it's still early days for us, but essentially we are not looking at replacing the physical experience. If anything, look at people who travel a lot. For an example, if you have your local doctor from where you live, you walk up to them, you drive up to them, no issue. But the minute you start traveling, you don't know where you're traveling to, what the service providers are in that area, and you don't know what medical needs you might have at that point in time. So an application on a platform like ours then makes that quite a convenient and sort of good process to go through, where you're able to look at the doctors in your area or caregivers in your area, and look at their ratings, because we've got a rating system to say how is this service provider providing services to patients, and equally so the providers get to look at patients which might be delinquent, and you might get a low rating as a delinquent patient as well. So it's a two-way rating system, but it just takes away, and improves the service delivery all across the board.
Yeah. And from a centralizing perspective, does it have the capability to sort of centralize your medical care? Oftentimes you have your GP, then you have in a woman's instance your GP, your gynae, your dentist, whatever, and these people work in silos.
Yes.
But there could be times where medically their paths have to cross. Some finds out something that needs to be relayed to the other.
Yes, that's a very good point. We haven't developed yet a referral type of system as yet, but it's certainly in the plan, to say when you begin to integrate the information and you begin to build a journey, you're able to say 5 years ago you were diagnosed with blood pressure, for instance, and you begin to change your habits, and you go back to the doctor and you find that you've reversed, the situation. So over that 5-10 year period, you're able to see your journey and how you've progressed or regressed, which is something that typically a lot of us don't have at the moment as a patient. You don't know what your vitals were 10 years ago. You don't know what they were 5 years ago. So I think the whole use of information is really where we see the power of the application as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And weirdly enough, doctors are always reluctant to share that information with you, even though it's your data.
Absolutely.
Parting shot. In terms of data sharing, data capturing, a lot of people also skeptical about applications because there's always the fine print. Can we share your data with? How are you safeguarding that for people on the platform?
So we subscribe to very strong data management principles, data security measures, identity access management. So nobody that's not authorized to access your information won't access it. And essentially, we can only do as much as that. And because we are at infancy stages, we're learning on how best to even improve certain things a whole lot better. But we certainly, I run another business which is a technology business which provides cybersecurity services. So it's something that really almost comes second nature to how we've architected the application, to be very conscious of how information is managed across the board between the providers and the patients.
Awesome stuff. Nkululeko, it sounds like you are definitely onto something here. That was Nkululeko Khumalo McKay, and he's the CEO of Homespital. You can download it wherever you buy your apps, whether you are Android or you are Apple. You can find it at your application store. That is how we wrap it up from my end. And of course, Ashraf is standing by. Inshallah, God willing, we get to do it again tomorrow.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
The reason that this is happening, the reason people feel the way they do is because of what happened in 2021. Sham, have things changed in Phoenix since then? Has there been any healing, or is fear still the major sort of emotion at the moment? Is that really the problem here?
Well, I think since 2021, we've been very busy with communities from Bombay, from Inanda, from Zolisha. These were the affected areas. We are having various projects and programs which are currently also happening. And, this kind of thing is going to take a long time to heal. But we're very happy. In the next 1 week, in June 16, we're having in Inanda, where children from Phoenix would be interacting with Phoenix children from Mumbai on the issue of debate. We are hopeful that there is going to be peacing and lasting peace in the near future.
Sham Maharaj, thanks very much indeed. Phoenix Ubuntu Forum Coordinator.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes, 6 to 9 a.m.
Top stories for this hour. Dozens of people injured in KZN storms, and Namibia's president congratulates South Africa for holding peaceful elections. Good afternoon, I'm Eva Chipa. KZN Health MEC Noma Kukusimelane says off-duty healthcare workers and healthcare workers from other areas were called in last night to deal with